Welcome back to my Spoonie Sisters podcast. Today, I am thrilled to have Rick Cram with us, a resilience coach and speaker. He's someone who truly understands what it means to navigate life's toughest challenges. Through this program, Plan to Be Your Best as you navigate pain. Rick equips people to strengthen their resilience, find renewed purpose, and steer through the storms of chronic pain, grief, and more. With nearly 50 years of personal experience managing pain, brings a compassionate and empowering approach to helping others thrive. I can't wait for you to hear his story and wisdom. So let's dive in. Hi, Rick. How are you?
Jen, it's so good to be with you. Thank you so much for this. I've been looking forward to all of our conversation here.
I've been looking forward to it too. I want to just kind of dive in here and talk about your personal journey. Rick, you spent nearly 50 years navigating pain, including intense daily pain, since your 2019 surgery. Can you share a bit about your personal journey and how it has shaped the work you do today?
Great question. Two words that immediately stand out. Shape, because it does shape so many aspects of life, pain, whatever kind of pain anyone is in. And then the work, those two words, shape and work. It is work to get through it, to develop resilience, as I think about it, I think back, and actually next November will be the 50th anniversary of the football injury. What basically has been three significant waves of especially difficult, traumatizing pain. There was the knee injury. It was about 2 minutes to go at the end of the last game of my senior year of high school football. And it was going to be the next to last play I was ever going to play. And I was running the ball around to the right, and I got tackled in a way. It's actually an illegal tackle, but by a player who was absolutely furious as he was coming at me. He sort of had the angle on me. And I could see there was fire in his eyes. In fact, the whole team was upset. They had only won one game all season. We were beating them fairly badly. And he was angry, and he took it out on me with this particular tackle, flipped me over backwards in a way, and my left leg whiplashed into the ground. That was November, I think it was March or April the following year, had the first surgery. And that began this first of the three waves. The surgery, they needed to remove most of the meniscus, some bone chips. It didn't work. In fact, what the problem that precipitated was that my kneecap, every time I would start to bend and straighten my knee through the course of the next year, my kneecap kept tracking back and forth, and it doubled in size. So I ended up needing a second surgery, which didn't work, then a third over the course of basically about 2 years or so. And that first wave, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't prepared. And I didn't expect anything to go like this. I didn't expect to experience the kind of pain that I had. But the third surgery put me in a fairly good place, other than being at 20 years old and in a state where my knee is now fully arthritic. No meniscus, already a lot of work on it. But it did give me about 10 years or so of ability to do all right. And then it went south again for what ended up being the fourth, fifth, and sixth surgeries in my late 30s when I was about 40. The third wave was about 20 years later, 2019. My knee went south again. The total knee replacement I had back at the age of 40 that needed to be partially revised. The trouble with that was that the surgery fixed some things, but has left it in a state of trauma. And so the work, when you think about, as I reflect on the shape to your question, it shaped me dramatically, each of those three waves. And the work that I needed to do has had a profound effect on my life. It's changed me in more ways, and it's continuing to change me.
Wow. That's a lot to go through.
So that's what it is. It is a matter of going through it. And virtually every aspect of the Plan to Be Your Best as you navigate pain is about how to go through it. You might say from the trenches of daily pain, this is how to go through it. Refill your sails over and over again. It's about building resilience, and I'd love to talk about that. But then be able to do the things that pain takes away from us. It hijacks our focus, saps our energy, and frustrates our hope, even to the point of depression. One of the patterns that I've observed since the surgery number 7 is that basically every week I get a little active, the pain increases, I go down into the pit, then I sort of cloister myself in my place for a few days to come out of the pit, and then it starts all over again. I've been trying to disrupt that pattern for the past 6 months or so. So, but it's so many things, Jen. It's a learning experience. And in fact, I believe one of the ways to go through it is to be a perpetual learner. There's always something more to learn about how you're experiencing, how to be resilient, how to look at the ways that, all right, how can I win back that focus, spark new positive energy and fuel for my hope over and over again?
Most definitely, because I think it takes so much from us. It robs us of the future and the life that we have envisioned for ourselves. Next, I want to ask you about this Plan to Be Your Best, your program. It emphasizes on resilience and purpose. Can you walk us through the core principles of Plan to Be Your Best and how it can help people manage through their chronic pain?
Very, very good. In fact, that's what, to a great extent, it is. It's about managing it. And before I get into two different things, the 8 domains of resilience and the 3 steps of resilience, this is a methodology that basically it's about how to go through the pain, how to process the 2 primary sources of pain. Mm-hmm. The pain that I experience is, and it's different in this wave compared to when I was 40 or when I was 20, I get instant blasts of agony. And over time, over the course of maybe a couple of months or so, I'll experience well over a dozen different kinds of pain sensations. And one of the stressors that I deal with is not knowing exactly when I'm going to get the next blast of pain. I consider myself rather fortunate that only once a month or so I experience constant pain, but it's generally different blasts of pain that can be as bad as dozens a day or even a dozen or more an hour. And so to a great extent, the idea of the principles of how to process that, how to process the primary pain, and by the secondary sources of pain, that's what's happening up here. And it's what's happening in here. There's the primary physical pain, but there's also the mental distress, the emotional distress, even the grieving. Grieving is actually a constant part of this journey, which I'm practicing saying more and more often is not a journey of pain, but of a journey of resilience. So it helps to do that.
Okay, so I guess my next question would be, do you feel like you've gotten better through time of describing what the pain is like? Because like when we go to the doctor, they ask, okay, what kind of pain is it? Is it stabbing? Is it a burning? Has it gotten easier for you to describe these pains as you've gotten to know yourself better?
That's a great question. I'm a professional communicator, have background in marketing, communications, leadership development, engaging audiences. And so how I communicate it to myself is where I begin, and also communicating it to others. I will admit, as I've been working on the book, and I hope to have the manuscript done by the end of this year, it's been a tough process because expressing it all is, for me, revisiting a lot of basically there's 3 different pillars of trauma, if you will, that I've experienced and continue to work through. And sometimes I'll start to write, sit down, and I think I'm going to have a good hour of productive writing. Less than 5 minutes into it, I have to get up and just walk away from it because it's too upsetting. Mm-hmm. But even yesterday, if I may, I was journaling. And actually, to your point, one of the most important ways to process this is to express it all. Express the physical pain. Express what's going on in the mind. Express what's going on in the heart and in your soul. To any degree that we keep it in, it's going to cause more pain. There's a friend of mine, Dr. Mark Hicks, who said, pain is actually a healer, and he's right. But you have to do the hard work of going through it, if I may. And this might be too much information, but yesterday I was journaling, and I finally put down in pen, and I use my notes in my iPhone to journal a lot of what I'm thinking through. And I did it, and I'll share it with you to the extent that I can just remember it off the top of my head. It's a description of what the pain is like, what the pain journey is like. I'm writing it for the book. I'm not actually sure if I'll include it yet, but it's also a way to let people know I get it. If you're in pain, I see you, and I know it's hard. And I also wrote it to illustrate one way to use the 3 steps of resilience. Can I share it with you?
Absolutely. I love that.
So I wrote, for starters, if you see me in the supermarket, which I go to maybe once a month, anytime I get out of here, the pain begins. You'll see me holding onto the cart, plain face, standing upright, maybe just a hint of a limp, but you'll see me walking ultra slow. For someone who used to run track and the sprints, that slow walking is a form of pain in its own. But if you see me, You might see me flinch. All of a sudden, I'm sort of curling over my handles of the grocery cart, and you're not sure what's going on. Then you watch me as I'm walking, and you've got a special vision. And your vision starts to focus in and zoom in on my mind. You're able to look inside, and what you see is a tempest. It's a wild storm over the ocean. The waves are thrashing, 30 feet tall. The wind is wild. It looks like the worst storm that isn't even survivable. But there's two aspects to that storm. Sort of like when a tornado starts. It's two different forces of weather coming together, one warm and one cold. And that starts with the unstable air that starts the tornado. And that cyclone of thought and pain in response to never knowing when that next blast of pain is coming, or in response to the blast of pain. You're able to see in my mind that storm going. But the two different parts of it is one, I am fighting to survive. And the other is I'm fighting to thrive. And you're trying to figure that out. As you watch me walk to the checkout counter, I say hello to the woman behind the cash register. I say hello to the young man who's going to put my groceries in the bag. And they say hi. And all of a sudden I disappear from their view. I'm getting up off the floor because I got another shot of pain. And then I stand up to see them looking at me with the horror in their faces of the horror that I'm experiencing. But I sort of, with a small smile, say, one too many knee surgeries. And the young man, and this is actually something that happened, the young man says, sort of with this perplexed, but this look of awe on, he said, there must be quite a story there. And so I ended up getting everything. I pay for my groceries. They hand me the cart. I look at them and say, thank you. You're the best. And then I walk out feeling good that I was able to say something positive in that moment. It's really, really hard for me, Jen, to be in pain in front of other people. But as I leave the grocery store, here's where my mind goes. Even as that tempest starts to sort of swirl again, I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to go home. I'm going to lift some weights, even if it's only for 5 minutes, because that completely creates that shift. It completely wins back my focus, sparks new positive energy and fuel for my hope. I've got a total gym machine here. After having a chance to work out with Chuck Norris many years ago, on his total gym machine, I had to go buy one for myself, and it's still great today. But then the other thought is this. Maybe as I'm heading home, I'll work out, but then I'll get some more work done on the book. I've got a purpose. That's what that journal entry was. And that's what, if I leave here, and sometimes I don't need to leave, it's a daily journey of stories like that.
I think so many people can relate to that. And I really, truly appreciate you sharing that, because so many people walk through their day feeling like that, feeling alone and afraid to talk about it. And we need to talk about it.
So true. There are numerous ways, or at least a handful of ways, to express it. Having a background in marketing and media, pick a media. Maybe it's talking out loud to yourself. Maybe it's writing a journal. Maybe it's calling a friend or getting together with someone on a regular basis where you can speak it out or record it into your phone. The more you express it, the more you're actually then processing it and going through it in a healthy way.
So the emotional impact with chronic pain, it often creates that cyclone of thought and emotion like you just talked about. And how do you help individuals break free from this cycle and begin to regain and focus and feel that hope?
So much is about hope. And let me say this, I'll probably say it a couple of times, that anytime you're in pain or I'm in pain, or for those of you who are listening to this, you are one of your greatest sources of hope, because you've got two things in you, two innate qualities that make it possible for you to become more and more resilient. That's the innate ability to be intentional. And the other is to be your best, to take action and follow through. And the first step, what I do with people, is go through the 8 domains of resilience. I was actually asked by a major corporation to develop this for their top 50 managers 12 years ago, when they were actually in a form of pain. They were saying, we don't know how to lead ourselves and our teams through this challenging time. And not knowing how to do something is actually even a source of pain as well. But I walked people through these 8 domains of resilience. And in each one, they create building blocks. And for example, the very first one, plan and best, are acronyms for these 8. The first one is P stands for prepare. There are 3 pillars in this, but one of the main emphasis, or the essence of it, is to focus on something that also pain can hurt, and that is our sense of self. There are people who have come to me actually over the past 20 years who have said the same thing in their own way, and I've heard it a lot lately, especially through COVID. I don't know who I am anymore, and I don't know what to do about it. Pain, whatever the source of pain might be, shakes our sense of self. And so before we actually really move forward into any kind of establishing a plan or a pattern of new ways to create positive change in ourselves, is to think about who we are and also our values. When people come to me and say, I don't know who I am and I don't know what to do about it, there's a part of me that is excited. Number one, because they've voiced it. They've identified a real need, and I know there's something that they can do about it. Mm-hmm. And to see that transformation take place, sometimes it's really just a combination of a matter of minutes and two things: questions, the right questions, and the right kind of conversation. Look at the questions. Basically, there are three of them. What about you? To re-anchor who you are, to start that process of winning back that sense of self and seeing value in yourself. What about you is true? Secondly, what about you is good? And what about you is unchangeable? When pain is overwhelming, whatever the source of pain, we've got 20% of the U.S. population are experiencing chronic pain. 57% say they are experiencing some form of paralysis because of their excessive stress levels. There's all kinds of people in pain, and many of them are saying to themselves that same question, or that same statement. I don't know who I am. I don't know what to do about it. Remembering what's not changeable about you. What means there's a pillar of strength there. And spending some time talking through those questions. Time and time again, I see there's one particular woman who said this when I was speaking to a group and leading them through some of the plan to be your best steps. She was very honest and said exactly that. I don't know who I am. Less than half an hour later, she was actually sitting up straight. She had been writing down and actually not only talking to me, but also pairing up with and talking to the person next to her, thinking through those three questions. What about me is good? What about me is true? What about me is unchangeable? And you could see in her, even the tone of her voice, you could hear that pain in her when she made that honest comment. But then you could see, I see who I am. And that's the foundation to go on to take the next step. Then she was ready to go to the next domain, which is the listen domain. To listen to, part of it has to do with listening to that monologue in the head.
Absolutely. I think the monologue is everything, right?
It really is. There are a couple of quotes that come to mind. I can't recall who said these, but one is, what worries you masters you. Isn't that true? And the other is, what you think of, what you focus on, is what you experience. And so to a great extent, as we go through the listen and then each of the next of the 8 domains of resilience, we're honing in on creating new ways of focus, changing our focus. And to a great extent, this might be hard for a lot of people to hear, especially if you're in pain. These are choices, and might be part of, here's what I'm thinking. Sometimes it can be hard for people in pain, and I've experienced this, to reject hopeful thoughts, possible things that can possibly work or help, even if it's just with the mental distress and the emotional distress. But to a great extent, and even to think that these are choices, it might be hard to hear. But there are under this umbrella, there are things that you can control. There are things that you can actually work through in positive and encouraging ways that shows what's possible. And it's a matter of sometimes making small changes, sometimes making some significant changes, such as perspectives. There was a time, I often tell this story, about a month before my total knee replacement, sitting at my desk at an ad agency. And I remember the lighting in the room. It was such a powerful moment that I said to myself, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And then I caught myself. I said, no, I'm going to reframe. And actually reframing is one of the important skills. I reframed it to, this is one of the best things that I'm going to experience. Best because it's going to give me this total knee replacement. It's going to give me the relief that I so desperately need. And I'm going to look at it in a different way, as opposed to something that's happening to me. It's what I'm going to experience, which gets to the core of one of the aspects of this. There's this, like you were talking about, that cyclone of thought. That's a fight. When I get a shot of pain, I just seize up. My whole body flexes tight. My mind is flexing tight in a fight against the pain and how I'm experiencing it. So going with the flow is one of the things that we practice. And that's sometimes it's a small change, such as a perspective. Sometimes it's a more of a complete 180-degree turn. I need to think about this differently and approach it differently, or at least try.
It's true. We do. We have to at least try, because if we sit there in that moment and we let it take over,
right,
that's our future.
Right. So that's also your now. That pain, that storm, that tempest, that cyclone is in the now, but resilience is also in the now. It's what you do, what you choose to do. And one of the best parts of the plan to be your best steps is when you get to the now domain of resilience, being in the moment and doing it at a time when you can relax, take some deep breaths, when you're not overwhelmed with the pain, and be not only in the current moment, but a future moment. And think about and even make a list of the things that can be your go-to items when the pain is overwhelming again. For example, I do this regularly, and I've got over 24 different things on my go-to list. Some things I've tried and haven't worked, but I've identified actually more than 24 things that do work, so that when I get a shot of pain, and it might be a 7, 8, or 9, or even once in a while it's a 10 on a scale of 10, and it's terribly debilitating. I must admit, I'm a lion of intentionality like I've never been before, Jen. And I just described the severity of the pain in a way that I haven't said before. I usually pick my words more carefully to not choose words that are negative or have some kind of negative judgment or perspective on it. But the pain hits. I immediately go to those 3 steps of resilience. And I've already had the benefit of knowing what I need to do in that second step, because I've created that go-to list of things that wins back the focus, sparks new energy, and helps me move forward.
Wow, you have such incredible tips. I feel like we could easily record hours of conversation. Hi, it's Jen here. Welcome back, and thank you for joining us again. I want to give a special shout out to everyone who recently signed up with Rare Patient Voice. Your support means the world to me. If you haven't yet, this is another great way to back the podcast by signing up through our referral link. Rare Patient Voice is an incredible resource for people living with both the rare and non-rare diseases. It's a welcoming platform that offers a safe space to connect, share experiences, find support, and access valuable information. What we love most is how it shines a light on the rare and non-rare diseases while embracing all of the diagnoses. Rare Patient Voice connects patients and caregivers with opportunities to share their opinion in research studies. Whether it's surveys, phone interviews, focus groups, or clinical trials, your input matters. And you can earn an average of $120 an hour for your time. We're here to support you every step of the way, no matter what condition. So please, go check out Rare Patient Voice through our referral link.
So I hope to finish the book by the end of this year, get it published next year, but I'm never going to stop writing this book, because as long as I'm in pain and having this, no doctors have been able to come up with the solutions. I'm working with a new pain management doctor since May. Virtually everything has either backfired or simply not worked. And but I never give up hope. And there are other things. This is a remarkable time for those of you who are in pain. Don't give up hope. There are new things. Some of them are not even in the U.S. yet, but we live in a remarkable time regarding medical advances and technological advances. So one of my next steps will probably be to see a couple of doctors. I won't get into the nature of it because it's hard to talk about. But one of the things that I learned, if I may, when I went back to see my orthopedic surgeon, the one who's done several surgeries, including the last one, and to hear him say, "I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do," I was begging, truly begging, after a battery of tests, that he was going to tell me that I had an infection in the implants, the titanium implants, because that would have meant, all right, there's a solution here. There's something that can be done. But he said, for the first time, surgery is not an option. And I'll tell you, I left. And as I was walking down the hall and out to my car, I literally said to myself, well, this is me unto my demise. The pain was so bad, and still is. There I go again. I don't usually use the word bad, but I ended up driving away from that, and I just bawled within a minute driving down the road. But I had a plan. I got home, And I sat down, opened up my plan document on my computer, and I went through the combination of a couple of the different domains of resilience, including that now one. And as I started to add some new things to my go-to list, all of a sudden now I'm focused on not just the now, where I'm calming down, looking at what I can control. My cortisol lowers, my stress lowers, the stress in my throat and in my shoulders, where I carry stress physically, they relaxed. But I'm also in a future moment, thinking about, all right, what I'm going to do. And think about, while the goal of getting 90% pain-free again is not in the cards that day, I start to shift to the focus of process-oriented goals, how I'm going to go about doing this. And there's something about being in that now domain, in that now moment, that you're mindful about now, but also the future. And in a way, you're transcending time. There's even a peacefulness to it and a revitalization, because you're focused on things that you can control and that you know what you can do in the future, which is a source of hope.
Absolutely. What do you think is your top 3 in your toolkit of your go-to list when you're in these moments?
So you'll hear this from Michael J. Fox and others. It's to have an attitude of gratitude. When you're focused on gratitude, as some have said, and I've experienced time and time again, there's room for no other thought. I was driving down the road a couple months ago, and driving is tough because the vibrations in the car immediately. And I was on my way to see a client, and I'm trying to get into the mindset. I've been meeting with them. Actually, I've been a client for many years. They know of my pain. They see me in pain in our meetings. I had a huge shot of pain. And I said to myself, a thought that I genuinely believe. And I said to myself, this is a gift. And it is a gift. And in that moment, I was able to relax my shoulders, and I felt the stress leave my throat, my neck. It's a gift because I get to experience this pain, but I also get to experience what it's like to be uniquely qualified to live out this purpose. This is one of the things that's really evolved through these different 3 significant waves of this journey, to those 3 different eras of surgeries and waves of pain. My purpose is more defined than ever, and it is simply this: to equip and encourage people to plan to be their best as they navigate pain, and in turn, if they want to, become equipped to be, like me, uniquely qualified to do this. And that's my hope, that the book will help create this ripple effect of people becoming more resilient and finding ways that this can help people. I have a heart for people in prison. I have a heart for teenagers who are in pain, like me, when you're not ready, you're not prepared. And our brains aren't even fully developed at that part, that stage of life, the frontal lobe, which actually has a lot to do with how you're processing and how you're planning. So there's one of the 3 sources of trauma is what I experienced then and still am in tune with.
It's got me thinking, we often have people ask us, what would we change? What would we take away? How would we like our lives to be better, right? But going through these kind of things, they make us better, stronger, and more compassionate people. Yeah. And it's given you such a gift to be there for others in such a way that you wouldn't be there for them without it.
I'm not sure if I actually answered your question about the 3 things, and because this is part of that trauma experience. When I get to talking about this, like writing the book, it's not easy, and my mind will certainly veer off and take a journey in a different direction, like I think I just did. But to answer your question about 3 things, let me describe the 3 steps of resilience. Is number 1, tune in. Second step is to plan. The third is to be your best. And we tune in, especially after having the benefit of practicing this and creating a foundation, if you will, by going through the 8 domains of resilience. When you tune in, you're better able to do one of the things that you need most if you're in pain. That is to understand. And if you understand yourself, understand your needs, understand everything from triggers to what your values are and what your purpose is, you can make that tune in step rapid, really quick, and then move to the second is to plan. But you've already done the planning in advance. So when you get to that painful question, now what do I do? You've already identified, even if it's 5, 6, or 10 different things, you can pick one, and then you be your best. Be your best is to follow through, take action on it. And it's always going to be, number 1, a thought that you follow through on. an emotion that you pick and follow through on, or something physical, or ideally a combination of 2 or 3 of those. The optimum pivot to win back your focus, to spark that new energy and fuel for your hope, and to go bring even the pain and all that hurts and all that's with it, bring it along, move it forward into the future moment. For example, I get a blast of pain, and it might be the first time in some minutes or an hour, even a couple of hours. I can rip through those 3 steps really quickly and pick something. All right, I identify what I need, I tune in, I pick something I'm going to do, and then I follow through on it. But if the pain is stretched over time and more elevated and overwhelming, or if the intensity of the pain is greater, doing those 3 steps of resilience to bounce back again, each in the moment, needs to be repeated over and over again. Even when it might be hours, sometimes there can be very low days, but repeatedly doing it, practicing it, you'll see it does kick in. And then it's important, if I may, to do one more thing. That is to celebrate each victory, no matter how small. A good friend of mine said, she's Nadia Beltran in England. She's a neuroscientist and a leadership coach. And she said, neurons that fire together, wire together. It's so important to, when you're going through something tough, to recognize those good moments where you are resilient, celebrate it. Make that a positive neuron experience, if you will. It's going to help make it build in you 2 qualities, if I can add 2 more qualities to this, conviction and wisdom. These 2 things come out of going through not just trying to be your best as you navigate pain, but your own journey through the pain and the resilience. You have more conviction and intentionality. You feel more deeply stronger about wanting to survive and thrive. And then there's the wisdom. You've gained so much wisdom about yourself, about what resilience looks like to you. And if one of those falters, let's say the conviction falters, there's enough wisdom to pull you up. If the wisdom falters, the conviction is enough to pull you back up. And so that's a little bit more about, so those are, finally answered your question, I think. Three things to do, and I hope that helps.
Oh, I love it. So you've worked with countless people facing grief, stress, job loss, and all kinds of other challenges. What's a story or a moment that stands out to you as a testament to the power of resilience? When
I see someone, and I know of a few people like this, they've experienced the worst loss you can imagine. However you want to picture that, go ahead. And they've gone through it, and gone through it to the point where they are now leading their own support groups, or they've started a charity that are helping women in Uganda, for example. What hurts so much and continues to be a source of grieving in their lives, and they turn it for good. And plan to be your best as you navigate pain is one of the ways. There are multiple ways to do this, but it's one of the ways to do that. Let me think if I can share a specific story with you. I keep everyone confidential. I will say a common question is this, and someone asked me this recently. So how do I get my mind off the pain and onto something else? There's that challenging but really wise question. How? And we talked and went through some of the things that we're talking about, some other things that are very personal for this person. And this is key. One of the beauties about the Plan to Be Your Best approach is that it's very personal. Your resilience is going to be different than mine. Everyone was going to have their own resilience. But the more we talked through, and this person tried some of these things, put them into practice, being the best. She was following through and taking action on it. And then there's that response that comes afterwards. It might be a few days, or it might be actually sometimes even hours later, or maybe it's another week or so that goes by. But this person came back to me, I think the next day, and said, I'm feeling so much better. And I'll say, there's some practitioners who say that their different approach to being resilient, mindfulness, and so forth can reduce pain. And I'd like to think that it does that for some people. There are some people who are experiencing physical pain where the mindfulness alone does not reduce it. But to hear someone come back and say, I've been doing this and it works, I feel so much better, is exactly that kind of, even to say whatever degree it's a victory for this person. There is a smile in the voice. There's this new confidence in the voice. That is resilience.
I could not agree with you more there. Okay, I know we've talked about this, but If there's anything you want to add to it, on days when your pain feels overwhelming, what personal strategies do you rely on to stay grounded and motivated?
There are a number of things, and actually some of them are on my go-to items. Expressing, if I keep it in, and I know what it's like to be bitter, I know what it's like to be angry, especially as I was in my 30s, going through 4, 5, and 6. Strategies include, and let me actually think about this. It's an excellent question. When it comes to strategies, it is, number one, expressing it, applying the 3 steps of resilience over and over and over again. One of the things that I find helpful is, in as much as it's challenging to write the book, it's part of my pain management strategy. Caring for other people who are in pain, whatever the source of pain, whether it's physical, grieving, or it's just excessive stress, the more I care for them, help them, the more if that effort that I make flows right back to me. Are you familiar with the quote by Booker T. Washington, who said, if you want to lift up yourself, try lifting up someone else? And it's true. It's true. There's neuroplasticity at work there. Those are a few strategies. But I would say you could look at each of the 8 domains, and within each one merge new strategies. One, the B in BEST stands for bold. And it's pseudo, how should I say this? It's right that it comes after the now strategy where you've done some planning for the future. Being bold is really about how to be assertive. To take action, understand what triggers might hold you back, just like I was referring to some triggers that will squelch my trying to write the book. But being assertive means a few things. One is respect. You have respect for the pain, fully respect the fully human way that you're reacting to it mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and also have respect. Another one is for your need, for your respect that you have a right to say something. To voice it however you feel like you need to. Respect what planning can do. This is we've talked about. So that's another example of how from the different domains of resilience, different strategies will emerge. More, if I may. This one's big. The A in plan stands for accept. And it's not just about accepting the pain or the situation or your perspectives. There are 2 key questions in the accept domain. One is, what do you need to acclaim? What about you shall you really embrace and say, yes, I accept this about myself, good qualities. But then there's sort of this flip question to it. What do you need to shed? And when we explore that question, whether it's in someone's personal life or in business, there's always an answer. It might be, I need to shed a particular way of thinking. You've heard me talk about how intentional I am with my words. There are certain words and perspectives that I shed, or if they surface, know how to quickly answer them with a more positive thought.
That is a really good point. We all have something that we need to shed, whether we want to admit it to ourselves or admit it to anyone else. And sometimes we need to dig deep within ourselves to find out what that is and work on it.
Right. There's that word again. That's a good word, Jen. It's an important word. Work. It is work, but it's good work. It's good work.
It's worth it in the end. Many of our listeners, they live with chronic pain or autoimmune diseases or both. What's one actionable step they can take today to begin strengthening their resilience?
Well, I will actually offer two things. One is start communicating more, to pick a medium and start writing things down, finding some way to express. Some people, actually, there have been times when I've even written poems. There's this beauty that happens when you get it out. Last year, I came across in some old files something I had written over 30 years ago. My firstborn son died the day he was born, and I was grieving that, and I wrote maybe a few weeks after that about the grieving process, something that was both about the grieving but also about the hope of how I'm going to go through this. I found that last year after not seeing it probably for well over maybe 15 or 20 years, and it was handwritten, and to read that again, it was transformational about the way I'm still grieving the loss of Warren. It's a small example of how significant it can make a difference. So I looked at that. I read what my thoughts were then, and I'm now looking at it from a different perspective. And that can happen if you write something down now and then look at it just a week later. All of a sudden, what came out from what might have been something seemingly like a ping pong ball, thoughts bouncing back and forth, there's this clarity that comes out of it. So that's one thing. So for people who are in pain, if I may tell a quick story, this illustrates something really important for us all. About some weeks before my 6th knee operation again, I went to the hospital for a meeting in the boardroom. Actually, the hospital was a client of mine in the ad agency that I was with. But this time I'm going there not because of any business. I go to the boardroom and I walk in. There's this very long table with about 15 to 20 people sitting all around it. At the top of the head of the table, over to my left here, there was a nurse and a physical therapist. The one thing we all had in common was that we're about to get a total knee replacement. The nurse spends time thinking, all right, what are they sharing with us? Basically preparing us. There's that prepare strategy again. Preparing us for what to expect going into the hospital, going into the surgery room, coming out of that, and the whole experience. The physical therapist then talked for a while about the importance of physical therapy, how it would start the day after the day of your surgery. And they passed around samples of the prosthesis. And the physical therapist ends with a rather surprising question. So, how many of you play tennis? She asked all of us. Several people at the other end of the table raised their hand, hadn't been able to play for years. But then she says, so how many of you plan on playing tennis after your total knee replacement? A few people raised their hands. So she promptly said, for those of you who are stupid enough to go back to playing tennis, you have to only play doubles and add 2 phrases to your tennis vocabulary. One is, nice serve. And the other is, that's yours. Moral of the story being, when things change, especially when they're tough, team up with somebody. So that's one of the things to do. If you're in pain, you might be feeling more alone. We've got this loneliness epidemic, fortunately. But especially if your loneliness is peaked, connect with someone. And especially someone who knows how to listen, knows how to understand, and help you be your best. And so the other parts of that was add some new vocabulary to your tennis vocabulary, or in life, and then you're dealing, think of new ways of, and like you were saying, use new strategies and new phrases to your life of vocabulary, a life of resilience, and your vocabulary of resilience. And make this a journey that's much more about the pain and all that comes with it. Make it about your best, because as you'll read and see and hear from me so many times, your best is greater than the pain.
That's beautiful. That's really well said.
Thank you.
What do you hope to achieve through your work? And what message do you want to leave for those navigating pain and uncertainty?
Well, my hope is really a fulfillment of my purpose to reach as many people as I can through the book, through one-on-one meetings, through speaking, to help share these stories and these strategies and skills. It really is a matter of applying them. That is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. And to a great extent, one of the greatest benefits I'd love to see is that so many people realize that because of their pain journey and because of their journey to become resilient, they're uniquely qualified to be more encouraging to others. I think in society and families, that will be more fulfilling. That would be what my hope is. And then when it comes to a message I'll go back to what we were talking about earlier, that Jen, you are your greatest source for hope, or at least one of your greatest sources for hope for any challenge that you ever face. And I hope they are few and far between. But if you're in pain, remember you are one of your greatest sources of hope because of your abilities, the way you're uniquely and wonderfully made to be able to be intentional and to be your best. And I'll probably conclude with this point about this, is that what your best means. You can look online and look that up, Google, and you'll get dozens of websites that have 20, 30 different things to do to be your best. But it really comes down to these 3 things. Your greatest strengths in action. And by that, I mean they're great strengths because they're exceptional. Only you can do them as you would do them. And they're good for yourself and they're good for others. And they're strengths because it's something that you have in you and things you probably even enjoy working on and continually build on them. And then in action, we're only our best in the now when we're putting these things in action. So put your greatest strengths into action.
Finally, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about Plan to Be Your Best?
Thank you. Hopefully, God willing, I'll never forget, or God help me if I ever forget, my website is rickcram.com. And people can learn more about me and the Plan to Be Your Best as you navigate pain. Also, plan to be your best as a resilient leader. This is something I'm going to be bringing forward too. And on the home page of my website, there's a free download. We've a fillable PDF. It's for free. Download it, and it's got the prompts to go through the 3 steps of resilience. You can use it again and again, make multiple copies on your computer or print it out. And anytime you're identifying a need or something's overwhelming, go through them and you'll experience that firsthand, winning back your focus, sparking new positive energy and hope for moving forward, and beginning a new pattern. We could talk another whole hour, Jen, about pattern, but it creates a new pattern of thought and action and strengthening being your best. So I invite you to both contact me. I'm a holder of hope for you. And that PDF, I know, will make a positive difference in your moments and your days.
It absolutely will. And I'm going to challenge listeners right now. Go check it out. Go do the work. You know it's worth it. And thank you so much for your time. I hope we can have you back. I am already thinking of a million questions I have for you.
Jen, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And listeners, until next time, don't forget your spoon. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only. Consult your own physician for any medical issues that you may be having. The information should not be taken as a replacement for medical, clinical, professional advice, diagnoses, or medical intervention. My Spoonie Sisters and guests will not be held liable for any of the consequences of such action or inaction. Trigger warning. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics including, but not limited to, suicide, abuse, mental illness, and chronic disease. You are advised to refrain from listening if you are likely to be offended or adversely impacted by any of these topics. None of the guests or hosts will be responsible for your use of the information contained therein. Life is not merely to be alive, but to be well. Living a life with a chronic illness is best described with one word: unpredictable. Be Well's products are designed to make the unpredictable easier to deal with. Back when I was getting my infusions, I would have loved to have their adult zip hoodie. They even have one in pink. They also have everything from one-day pill holders to urgency buckets. So remember, they want to make your life a little easier. So be sure to check out Be Well.